Welcome to Diary of a Queen. I'm your host, Danielle Martin. Tonight we're joined by Meredith Dolhare Elliott. Meredith, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to speak with you today.
Meredith and I have had quite the time getting connected from one reason or another. And, sometimes people ask me why I share stuff like that. I share stuff like that because it's life, right? Things happen. Yesterday was a technical difficulty. Today was an issue with time, but we're here and we're together, and I'm so pleased, and I really do thank you for being with us. So I'm ready to jump right in. Are you ready?
I'm ready, and that's real, so thank you for sharing it.
It is. We try to keep it real here. We definitely try to keep it real. So I met Meredith at an event where she was accepting an honor for her life's journey and life's work. And I found you so wonderfully intriguing because one of the things that we try to do on this show, we talk about all the good stuff. And there's lots of good stuff in this world. We talk about the hard stuff too. And there's a lot of things that I know that you've gone through in your life that I really feel people can resonate with. And that's the whole point, right? As women, we need to lift each other up. We need to give each other advice because there's something that maybe that I've gone through or that Meredith has gone through that somebody watching can go, you know what? I connect with that. That's helped me. That helped me get through something. And in life, it is my goal, my sincere goal, to live a life of service. And in doing so, we need to help others. So, Meredith, one of the things that I love about you is you are so gregarious. It was like when I met you the first time, it was like I was meeting somebody that I had known for a very long time. Have you always been so outgoing?
Yes, actually, I have. My parents used to say, jokingly, that I'd better marry somebody big because I don't know a stranger. I've always just walked up and talked to literally anybody. I have an older sister, and she's much more reserved and shy. And she's 3 years older, but she used to just push me out in front of her. Be like, "Hey, Meredith, go ask this." She'd wind me up. "Hey, Meredith, go ask somebody this." And I would do anything. I would take any dare. I would walk up to anybody. I'm still like that. Yes, I've never met a stranger.
Well, I love it because it really did make me feel comfortable. And as soon as I walked away from you, I didn't really know all that much about you. And just by asking around and just by reading some of the things on your website, which, by the way, I will make sure that I include that information as a link below so that people can learn more about your work because it's very important and your life's journey. I know everything started out for you, maybe not completely initially, but a huge chunk of your life has been being an athlete. What did athletics look like for you as a younger person?
As a child, again, my parents always, because I was so hyperactive, it was a way for them to just kind of keep me out of trouble. I was a little precocious. Obviously, the redheaded thing is not a myth. And I come from a long line of redheads. My father's a redhead, and my grandmother's a redhead, and her mother's a redhead. And, my grandmother kept him in swimming to keep him out of trouble. And then I was, bouncing off the walls when I was little. So they put me first in soccer. And then my sister was traveling around playing tennis, and they had to take me with them. And so they were like, what are we going to do with this kid? So they just started dropping me into tennis tournaments, and I loved it. So, when she would play, I would take her rackets on the court with me too, to, look like a pro. So I'd carry like 5 rackets onto the court, so obnoxious from the beginning. And then I started winning. And of course I loved to win. So I'd walk up, they'd put me, I was 8 years old, and they'd have me, if there wasn't a tens tournament, they'd put me in the 12s. And if I won the tournament, I'd walk up and how old are you? Just such a little brat from the very beginning, but it did keep me out of trouble. And so I just played tennis and played tennis and played tennis to abandon all the way till I was 22 years old. I was top 10 in the country and juniors and throughout college. I played at UCLA and Vanderbilt. But it really was, and there's a reason I'm telling you that, it was in the beginning, really my outlet. You know, if I was bullied at school, I knew that I could go after school, and there was that outlet of knowing that I had other friends. You know, I had those friends that I connected with on the tennis court and who respected me for who I was. You know, even if those friends at school, you know, didn't really respect me for being an academic, or they were just cheating off my paper or whatever. You know, I was a little awkward. They called me Annie. I wore a patch on my eye. You know, I was very awkward in school. Buck teeth, curly red hair, a patch on my eye. It was not a good look. Trust me. Trust me. And I thought I mean, now they probably think, honestly, that I had gender identity issues. I was running around kicking boys in the shin. You know, I played with trucks. I loved cars. I would memorize all the license plates at our club. You know, I loved automobile. I was just really an interesting kid. But sports were, you know, my way out. And from the time I was really young, I knew I wanted to get a scholarship to college, and that I worked hard, and that's what I did. And both academics and athletics. And I was just hyper focused. So it was definitely something that I knew was going to keep me out of trouble. I didn't go out on the weekends with everybody. I was babysitting on the weekends so that I could actually do things on my own. You know, one not so great thing was that my parents didn't put a lot of pressure on me, but if I wanted extras, I had to win, which is not a great, you know, you have kids. It's not really a great precedent to set. Oh, well, if you want that sweatsuit, you have to win states. If you want this, you have to win the Southern tennis tournament. And I was like, I'm going to win, but I don't necessarily think that's great to put that kind of pressure on me. So I started babysitting all the time. But that also taught me hard work. So I was like, I'm going to get those clothes for school, but I'm actually going to do it my own way, you know?
Right.
So there was some negative things going on in my childhood outside of tennis and outside of school in my home life that also made me want to escape with sports. And so that's why I kind of later in life, I understand what's going on with some of the people that I serve.
And, you know, sports for you, and for anybody that's watching right now, this is going to come full circle because sports for Meredith is something that has been transitional her entire life. Mm. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your work with homelessness and trauma, and all of the people that you have worked with through your organization, RunningWorks. And RunningWorks is exactly what you would think it to be, that running works. And it was something that worked for her. I mean, we're sitting here, we're not looking at just a little old gal, right? This is a lady who has been in Ironmans and, you know, tennis. I think you were 9th in the country at one point. So, you know, sports, there is a very interesting thing about sports. And there's been so many studies on athletes after they are done being in competitive sports, that it's a very difficult transition, because you were talking about winning, and that's why I'm bringing this up. When you go from people cheering for you to not, that is its own interesting thing and very difficult to deal with, especially if you're in sports at a young age. So talk to me about RunningWorks, because I think this is so incredible and I love the work that you're doing with that. Talk to me about how it started based on your experience and where it's at today.
Well, there's a little bit of a grieving process when you're playing a sport at a super high level and it's been your whole identity in your life, especially from a very young age. I mean, I started hitting the ball when I was 5 and winning tournaments when I was 8. And then so hyper invested in it. You know, obviously I was an academic too, but I was so hyper invested in it from my entire childhood all the way through college. And then I had a career-ending injury at 22 and had the opportunity to play on the tour, but my shoulder just wouldn't hold up. So I got married, had kids really young. You know, my husband played at Notre Dame and was #1 in Argentina. So there's all of that was wrapped in there together. Right. Where we played the same sport. So we're connecting on that level too. And then for me, it just came to an end, like an abrupt end. all of a sudden I'm a mom, I'm a wife. We moved. We're here in Charlotte. I was very well known in Memphis, and who am I? Like I
Right.
just sort of hit this wall. And I had always been so focused that I didn't know that I had any kind of addict gene. I had, first of all, it's genetic.
Right.
So yes, I had some sort of awareness that it ran in my family, just it was never talked about. But I had an awareness that, my great grandfather maybe was mean sometimes and might have been a little off every now and then. And that my grandmother, she liked her juice is what I used to call it, but it was never talked about. It was very taboo, in that day and age, we're the same age, very taboo. We don't talk about those things.
Right.
So, I had 2 kids back to back in my early 20s. And, all of a sudden I'm this mom and I'm this wife and my husband's off working and traveling. And I very much lost my way. Mm-hmm. And, in my mid 20s, I had never drank alcoholically. I had never done a single drug. I had never done anything. And all of a sudden I'm this mom and my husband's gone all the time, traveling all over the world. And I just put it this way. I was in treatment the first time by 28.
Wow.
It was fast and furious. And so I had to, when I got out of treatment, my privilege afforded me great access to care. And this becomes very important because most people don't have that. First of all, my family didn't forsake me. They care about me. There, but for the grace of God go I, that I'm not one of those people that was like sitting on a curb having lost everything. What happened to me? I go to treatment at a very great place. I'm there 30 days, have great access when I get out of treatment to more substance abuse care, to trauma care. And the other thing that I never told anyone is that I was raped when I was 16 by a coach and a peer, and his family got involved. I was in this house that I would go back and forth to because his coach was a very good coach. For 9 months this went on, and I didn't tell anyone. Wow. So my first addiction really was to that success. Like, well, if this happened to me, I'm not going to tell anyone. And I'm going to pile on, everything's okay. Don't look at me. Nothing to see here. I'm going to get that scholarship to Stanford. I'm going to get that scholarship to UCLA. I'm going to just kill it. I don't want anyone to think anything's wrong with me. And a lot of people do that. Right. Like, because especially then it was very taboo to talk about being raped by someone you knew. There was a lot of shame and fear. And I lost my virginity in a rape as well. So, it wasn't like I was, I had hardly even kissed a boy at this point. So I didn't tell anyone for 12 years. That also explains why it was age 28, because I got to treatment and they're like, okay, what happened to you? The substance stuff is fine, but you obviously have some clear trauma. What is going on here? So fast forward, that enables me to really have a pulse with the homeless, because homeless men and women, most of them have trauma. Even I would say all of them have trauma. If you've been homeless even a day of your life and you've been on the street, you've got trauma.
Right.
I would say 8 out of 10 have substance abuse issues. So there's a real kinship that I feel with them. And, in all of the treatment that I've had, I have PTSD before the age of 5 also. So I thought it was always, age 16 on, I've got PTSD. No, I have early childhood trauma as well for some of the things that went on in my life that I had never even thought were affecting me at the time. I've got all sorts of issues, just like they do. So what ended up happening is I got out of treatment and I was thinking, well, now what? I have all this care, all these people helping me. But in the end, what really has saved my life in the past is sports. It's that access to mind, body, spirit. So I can still do all these other things. I can be in AA. I can go to my therapist. I can, get all this trauma help. But it's sport for social change. It's the discipline, confidence, teamwork, self-respect, respect for others that I get from sports. So I started racing. I started doing Ironman. I know that sounds crazy, but I did start with Ironman. an Ironman's a 2.4 mile swim, a 112-mile bike, and a full marathon. So I started with Ironman, and then, started doing those like back to back to back, like a crazy person. So yeah, there's a little cross addiction there. You're not wrong. Right. Yeah. So I do like 3 in 3 consecutive countries in France, Austria, Switzerland. I did like 12 within 3 years, and then kind of upped the ante. But in the middle of that, because I was doing all this crazy stuff, I decided to start raising funds for something. And I started raising money for the Challenged Athletes Foundation, which is, prosthetic limbs for athletes. And I found that I had some real fundraising capabilities because people were they were betting on like these crazy things that I was doing. My husband's colleagues were like, oh, she's not going to finish that. She's doing the Ultraman now. And the Ultraman's 2.5 times the Ironman. I'll put $2,500 on that. So I raised $75,000 in a summer.
Wow.
Which is insane. And then I was like, well, if I can do that, I need to do something in my own community. And who do I feel the kinship with? As I mentioned, the homeless. And people thought I was crazy because I was like, I'm going to run with them. I want to give them freely what was so freely given to me. And that is, it's easy. I mean, all I have to do is the hook is running. That's the hook, is just getting them in the door and saying, hey, try this out. It worked for me. Maybe it'll work for you. And at first people were like, you're going to run with homeless people? Like, this wasn't done before. Now there's a couple programs who actually do it because, we're 11 years old now and people didn't think it had legs, and now we're 11 years old. So that's kind of funny too. But, I started at the Urban Ministry Center, and my model was, especially since my addict brain knows what they're thinking, this is why it's worked. The lunch line at the Urban Ministry Center, now roof above, opens at 9:45. And they were standing around in the lunch line, getting in all kinds of trouble. They'll have people hold their spot in the lunch line, and then they'll run off to campus and do a bunch of drugs and come back and get in line. And it doesn't actually move until 11:45. So my plan was to pluck them out of the line, go run with them instead of them getting in trouble. And then they get back in the line. So the first day I get out there and I get on the hoot at the Urban Ministry Center, and I'm like, hey, does anybody want to come run with me? I look like this. And they're like, no. And I say, do you want to earn some free shoes? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, okay, well, you have to come 3 times in a row. So this is how it started. First day I had 12 people, all men. Of course, which was kind of funny too. Now we have a good cross section, a good mix. But, that was how it started. And it was really a beautiful thing because the first year I had 4 full marathon finishers. The program started in April, and by November we had people finishing marathons.
That's amazing.
And by January I had a 50K finisher, and we ended up in Sports Illustrated.
Wow.
Because of that. And NPR. And the program the rest is kind of history. And as we go on, I can explain to you a little bit more how it works. But it does work. Running works.
And I love that because, first off, something that you brought up is about the genetic component of addiction. And I've dealt with addiction in my family, not my immediate family, but in my family. And I remember at some point, a very good friend and mentor of mine told me that being mad at somebody for being addicted is like being mad at them for having cancer. They can't help it. It's a part of who they are. And that was actually, because at that point I was very angry. I was very angry. Just stop. Just do. It's just easy. Just do it. Right. So, that's something that I do want to impress upon anybody that is watching. Addiction is something, first off, it affects so many people. It doesn't just affect, the person that's going through it. And if it were as easy as just stopping, a lot of people would just stop. So I'm very happy that you brought that up. The other thing that I think is so fantastic is you're offering a program to people that provides so much hope. Hope is something that is so fleeting and difficult to find sometimes. And the thought of somebody going, hey, you know what? I've been through this. I'm going to, as you said, you were in a position of more privilege where other people were not. But for you to just go, hey, I think I'm going to do this. And I'm going to be with people that aren't quite like me, but yet we still have something in common. There's that common factor that you guys have, which I think is a beautiful sentiment because we are all connected in some way, shape, or form. So you're now at a place 11 years long that RunningWorks has been around from its idea stage and inception. Where is RunningWorks at now? Are you exclusively in Charlotte? I don't know if it is other places, and I apologize for not knowing that. But where is RunningWorks at now?
Well, actually, that's sort of amusing as well. So we take such a hands-on approach to our clientele, who we call team members, that, in the beginning, we had all this great press, especially because I was still racing professionally. And, I did Badwater, which is 135 miles in Death Valley. I did the 508, 508-mile bike ride in Death Valley. And the two of them together are called the Death Valley Cup. And I'm the 6th female ever to have done that and the 21st person ever. So it really was putting us on this national stage, on this national map. And that's how Sports Illustrated picked it up. Runner's World picked it up, NPR. And so we started getting people reaching out, like the mayor of Denver called me and he's like, we'd like to start a RunningWorks. And frankly, because I'm so protective of the population that we serve, and I know how much they've been let down in the past by family members, by friends, by people in general, by people who walk by them, they're the overlooked population. And I'm really careful and really conscientious about who I put in front of them, honestly, and who I want to serve them. And we are dealing with the most dire cases. So often, even in Charlotte, we get the cases that nobody else wants to help, that they've given up on. Even some of the best organizations. I mean, I'm on the board of other organizations. I was on the board of the Urban Ministry Center. I'm on the board of the Charlotte Rescue Mission, who I love, and that's a recovery organization. But people give up because it's hard work. I mean, this is not for the faint of heart. It's a labor of love. And if you don't understand the population, people walk away. And we started trying to expand, and we had a couple of people walk away. And like early on, and I was like, okay, I am not willing to have our name associated with people walking away, or even have like my name associated with, because there's so much trust that's involved. They trust me implicitly and I trust them. And that's saying something because I have trust issues as well. And I understand how important that is. So we decided to be very intentional about our growth and about how deep the dive is here in Charlotte. And what I love about that is we're the referral source. Like we are the ecosystem here that we triage people at RunningWorks, and we have the best case manager now. He's got 18 years experience. And what we do now is our tagline is health, community, opportunity, in that order. So if we do not get our people healthy, like mind, body, spirit, mental health, physical health, sobriety, so we're referring them. First of all, we get them in there and we make sure we find exactly what the issue is. Why didn't other agencies work for them? What do we need to do? How do we need to refer them to the correct mental health and sobriety, substance abuse issues? Let's get that under control before we refer to employment and housing, or it's not going to work. Right. I mean, there are agencies in Charlotte that are housing first. I don't believe in that. We don't believe in that because we tried it. And they were losing jobs. They were losing housing. We get them into housing and they'd last 6 months maybe. And then what they're doing is they're holing up, they're getting drunk, they're getting high, and they're getting kicked out if they survive.
Right.
If they even survive. or we get them a fantastic job and they're killing it for a few months. And then it's just not sustainable because their mental health isn't solid. And so for me, it's so important that they get the care that I got, that my privilege afforded me, that we're able to refer them to the exact right place that they need to be in order for them to keep housing, to keep employment, and to be able to get back into their family. Most of them are estranged from their family.
Right.
And now we're able to give them transportation, they can reconnect, and that community that they get even with us, if they don't have family, they have it with us. You know, we are their family. We are their community. You interview anyone from RunningWorks, the first thing they say, RunningWorks is my family. That's it. RunningWorks is my family. If I'm in the shelter, I know now that I can bunk with a RunningWorks person. I don't have to be around those negative people. It's all who I surround myself with, just like you and I know. And that would be one of my pieces of advice. It's all who you surround yourself with, even with homeless people. If they're surrounding themselves with good people, we open our office every day so that they can come in and have a safe, healthy, positive place to be. For me, that's so important. And we didn't figure this all out even in the first 5 years. You know,
Right.
It's been the second 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 even, you know, we're still working on it. But it's so important for us to really just have that one microcosm where we're figuring it out. And we're serving 200 people a week, but it's the same 200 people, and we're making them better every day.
I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, and the first thing that comes to my mind is every once in a while I feel like I get these little God notes. You know, my friend calls them little notes from God, that I keep on seeing this word that says blessed. I feel very blessed to have met you. I enjoy hearing about you. It's very difficult for me to listen to people that come on the show that have experienced trauma and have experienced some of the things that you're talking about. And we've talked about everything on this show, from infant loss to addiction issues and everything else in between. And for me to say that I'm blessed. I'm blessed because I feel that meeting you and getting the opportunity to have you on the show is something that's going to affect change. I'm not happy about what happened to you. I'm not happy that you had trauma. I am not happy that you had to live a life with children in tow, with addiction. I'm not happy for any of those things that happened to you. But I know they are a part of who you are and got you to where you are today. And for that, I am thankful and blessed. Meredith, I cannot begin to tell you how impactful this was for me. Thank you very, very much for being on with us and being so frank and so raw and so open. It's incredibly important, not just in our community, meeting women, but it's important just in general. Thank you for what you're doing. And, you know, we had talked about this at the beginning of the show before we ever got on, that I always love to ask my guests if they could offer up one piece of advice. You kind of touched on that, but if you could expand on it, if you were to give anybody one piece of advice, maybe even specifically women, what would be that one piece of advice?
I actually just thought of an even better one. This is huge for me. I am writing a book, and it's almost done. It's called Running to Stand Still. And this is the why behind it, to be honest. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. And that's kind of part of why I started RunningWorks, is if we just listen to people's stories, and if people are brave enough to tell their stories, tell the story. But one of the biggest things about RunningWorks is the difference between empathy and sympathy. And it's huge. When you're talking to anybody, please, when you meet a homeless person, do not feel bad for them. Feel with them. Share your story. That's the difference. They don't want you to feel bad for them. They want you to listen to them. And, you know, empathy is feeling with someone. It's sharing your story. Sympathy is, oh, bless your heart. That really sucks. And then not telling them anything about yourself. And that is especially true with women. I think women feel so much shame. We're so shame based. And for me, part of what my book is coming out of that closet and talking about alcoholism as a mother.
Mm.
Because my kids have seen me drunk and they did suffer. And, honestly, this is one of my biggest shameful moments is that when my kids were learning to drive, one of them had to take the wheel from me. And I'm going to tell you that because this is a shame-based story that no one in their right mind would tell anybody.
Right.
I was hammered, and my son, who had his permit, acted like he wanted to practice driving because he had to take the wheel from his mom. Don't be ashamed to tell these stories. Let someone learn from them and realize, you know what, I can learn from that. And maybe there's someone listening to this who's struggling with alcoholism, who doesn't ever want to tell anything. Just get some help. There's no shame in getting help. There's shame in being out there. Just ask for help. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Just get some help.
And, as women, I probably bring this up almost every time on the show, because anytime we talk about anything that's difficult or traumatic, a lot of times women, we love to wear masks. We're good at it. We like it. We just make sure everything, you talked about at the beginning, everything's okay. I'm good. Nothing to see here. Everything's good. That's just how, how we do. But sharing our stories, that's the whole point of this podcast, sharing our stories and being raw and being real is what we can do in this life to help other people. We can learn so much from each other that at the end of the day, we're all we need. We just need each other. So Meredith, I thank you so much. This has been a complete and total honor. For anybody that is watching right now, please like this video because it lets us know that everything that we are putting out are things that you enjoy as well. And we can continue to put out that type of content. And subscribe to the channel. You will get to hear and see from people all over the world stories just like Meredith has told today. So with all of that being said, Meredith, thank you. I appreciate your time. And I thank you so much for your life and your life's journey. Blessed to know you and to have you on the show. And this has been Diary of a Queen.